This is not a kitten video. It's not a kitten or a puppy video. I mean, the reality is this. This is a retreat, a reflection on living the Beatitudes. It can't be something you just kind of listen on the fly or in passing. That's not how we grow in faith. I'm encouraging you, I'm asking you. Go to your room, close your door, go outside and sit and listen to this and watch it. Reflect deeply. That's the intention of this talk. To reflect more deeply that we might imitate Jesus Christ, who is the icon of all the Beatitudes. This is not a kitten video. Some of you may have heard the story of Ben Breedlove. He was an 18-year-old who made a video with white note cards in 2012, where he told the story of having a serious heart ailment that affected his heart's ability to pump blood normally. And he shared with others through these note cards his experiences of kind of near-death experiences. That God gave him a great peace, though he died he was near death several times. His last experience was a month earlier, and he filmed this a few weeks before Christmas. And in the video, one of his note cards came up and said, "Do you believe in God and angels?" And his next note card was, "I do." His next note card was, "And I experienced a peace that I never wanted to end." You see, Ben died a few weeks later, and his parents found this film on his phone. It was later put on YouTube, and it went viral video. I can't say for a fact that Ben had an encounter with God. The experience of peace was just palpable, and something he said, I'll never ever forget it. What we can say is this: peace is a gift from God, and something God alone can give. Do you remember the words of Jesus? He said, "Peace I leave you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give you my peace." You see, if we want peace in the world, it has to begin with peace within. It's a fact. If you're not at peace with God, you'll never be fully peace in your heart and your soul. You just won't. It makes sense. You see, we're God's creation, and He's the creator. That would be like a child pretending he didn't have parents. And the scriptures are clear. He made us. We belong to Him. You see, every one of us is made in the image and likeness of God, and rebelling against that doesn't make it not true. Have you ever seen that bumper sticker they have? It says, "No God, N-O, no God, no peace." Or no, K-N-O-W, no God, you will know peace. There's great truth in that, isn't it? Peace in the world begins with peace within. You see, peace with God leads us ultimately to have peace with ourselves, peace with others. All three of those relationships are intertwined. And only Jesus can give us that. It comes to us ultimately in the Holy Spirit. You see, peace is one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. It's one of God's manifestations of His presence, of His love, and ultimately His life that He came to give. Now, you and I know that some people are peacemakers by temperament. That's a good thing, but it's different from the peace that Jesus Christ gives. And one of those temptations for those whose general temperament is kind of to have peace is almost this desire to have peace at all costs. But that's not what Jesus is talking about. In fact, peace at all costs, what if a person was kind of turned a blind eye to things like addiction or abuse or stealing or violence? We wouldn't call them peacemakers. We'd probably call them something like, "You're enabling them," or "That's being negligent," and rightly so. How many people have thought deep down, well, I'm just called to be a peacemaker and keep the peace at all costs? Let's not give peacemaking a bad name. That's not what the Beatitude is talking about. In fact, Jesus, who was the Prince of Peace, literally sometimes rightly had to stir things up. There are times that He called out the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. He turned over money changer tables for people who are overcharging the pilgrims and defiling the temple in doing so. You ever heard the famous phrase by St. Paul VI? He said this: "If you want peace, work for justice." You see, injustices in all its forms matter to those who strive to be peacemakers. As followers of Jesus Christ, we're never indifferent to those who are displaced by war. That's what a refugee is. We can't be indifferent to refugees. We're not indifferent to those in poverty or those who are unemployed, the homeless, the unborn, those of frail health. We're not indifferent to the vulnerable who have been taken advantage of by others, those who have experienced injustices in their life. You see, part of being a peacemaker is speaking up, standing up, working for justice or opportunity, or even willing to be in solidarity with our brothers and sisters ultimately in need. Do you know the story of Madeleine Delbrel? She's known as the French Dorothy Day. You know, the one who worked with the poor in New York City? And she lived in Paris during a time when they were experiencing the Great Depression in France. She was one of these great witnesses of being Christ for others and seeing Christ in others in the 100 different ways that plays out each day. Listen to what she wrote. She said this: God is everywhere. How many souls even take notice of it? And this was her prayer: Lord, Lord, my eyes, my hands, and my mouth, they're all yours. They're all yours, Lord. And then she gives examples. That sad lady in front of me on the bus, here's my mouth that I might smile at her. The child who's so pale and almost gray, here are my eyes to give them a gaze of love. And that man that's so tired, so weary, here's my body. I may give him my seat. Here's my voice that I may say softly to him, Sir, please sit down. The smug young man so dull and so hard, she wrote, here's my heart, that you might love him more strongly than he's ever been loved before. Madeleine was front lines with feeding the poor, helping people find jobs and housing. She reached out to those who were on the margins and those who were struggling, especially those with no faith. And she lived in an area of town where the communists and Catholics would be in open conflict. Yet that's where Madeleine was placed. One of my favorite sayings of Madeleine is this: we were made for this time, in this place, with these people, and it's here that our holiness lies. How beautiful. We don't have to wait for perfect circumstances to be instruments of God's peace and to care about others and working for justice. You see, peace, being a peacemaker, and justice, they go together. They go together, yet justice always has to be tempered by mercy. You see, if we're honest and self-reflective as a culture, we're not in the best place in how we treat each other, how we speak to one another, even how we speak out against injustices. Sometimes it's presumptuous or quick to accuse without understanding, or quick to play gotcha, quick to write off, or even blow up at another person. I'd like to say something very clearly that I think needs to be said, especially for followers of Christ. Division is from the devil. Division is from the evil one. We have to know that. Now, in a certain sense, Jesus did come to bring division. He says that in the scriptures, in terms of dividing those who are for him or against him. He does ask to make a choice for him. But Jesus also came to die for everyone, for those who loved him, and also for those who crucified him. As a follower of Jesus Christ, if we're not striving to live that, we should think about how we're calling ourselves a follower of Christ. He himself said, "Blessed are the peacemakers. They will be called children of God." What are some of the marks and signs of a peacemaker who's blessed in the Lord's eyes? Here might be a brief examination of conscience for us. The first might be this: how are we doing with giving people the benefit of the doubt and try to hear them, not just what they said, but the meaning of what they're trying to convey? That's necessary to be a peacemaker. Are we more concerned about being heard? I need you to understand me versus trying to understand them. That sense of like, you're not listening to me. Have you hear me? It's like, actually, we need to hear them first. Even if we still disagree in the end, that's necessary to be a peacemaker. Do we try to seek the true, good, and beautiful of what anyone says, even if we disagree with something? Pope Benedict had a great gift for that. He would speak to anybody, to atheists, to non-believers, and he had a way of really acknowledging, when you bring this up, wow, that is a difficult challenge. And they'd say, but we would also say this. And so he had a great respect for persons and where they're coming from and listening deeply. Our brothers and sisters, that's what it means to be a peacemaker. We're always looking for what's true, and even if it's a half-truth, we're always looking for ways to have common ground in conversations. You see, you and I are called to build bridges between people, build bridges between minds and hearts. Now let's face it, there are some people in conversations where people we speak with, they aren't looking for a discussion. Maybe they like to argue or they like to rant. We don't have the absolute responsibility of engaging everyone in these conversations. In fact, sometimes if they're fruitless conversations on those discussions, they can be avoided. They aren't going anywhere anyway. Yet we should have a peaceable disposition and attitude. He was a great model of that, and someone who really challenged himself that. It wasn't easy for him. It was Francis de Sales, the Bishop of Geneva in southeast France and also a little bit in Switzerland. And he talks about this. He reminds us, you see, humility perfects us in respect to God, but gentleness perfects us with respect to our neighbor. You see, Francis de Sales was always talking about gentleness and disagreement. Not because it was easy. Again, it was hard for him, and frequently he wanted to lose his his self-control. But he tried to love people in love and ultimately in gentleness. What's one of his famous phrases? You can catch more flies with a spoonful of honey than you can with 100 barrels of vinegar. He also said this: isn't it true that a good breeze causes a ship, helps a ship to go farther than 100 oars? He said, just in the same way, a kind word wins more willing service than 100 harsh and stern reproofs. We need to be more peaceable and gentle with one another in most circumstances. What about with people who are rude or hurtful to us? Here's St. Francis de Sales' advice, one who lived it. People literally actively undermined him on a regular basis as bishop there. He said this: answer only by doing good to those who slander you. It's a better way of annoying them than fighting back. Isn't that beautiful? Let's annoy them with our kindness and goodness, even if they undermine us. Doesn't mean we're not called to bring things to attention, sometimes to have tough love. But as a general rule, to be a peacemaker is to have more a firm but also a gentle disposition. That has to be part of it. And you remember Jesus' words to his followers. They were clear as they are challenging. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hurt you. Pray for your persecutors. The last story I leave you with is this. Have you heard the story of the Tiberine monks of Algiers who recently were declared blessed by the church? You see that they lived peaceably for years with the Muslims, serving the poor with medical assistance and ultimately aid, until a more radical Islamic group entered the area and they were told, you have to leave for your safety. And then there's all this tension and confusion. Should we stay? Should we go? What good is it to stay if we're going to die anyway? If you've never had an opportunity to see the movie Of Gods and Men, you have to see the movie. It's powerful. It tells the story of just prayer and discernment. What should we do? What is God asking of us? And it depicts their discernment and struggle about what to do in these difficult circumstances. But after a lot of prayer and discernment, they all agree, we're going to stay. We're going to be a witness of peace and a witness of love of Jesus Christ, no matter what happens. Shortly before they were kidnapped and later martyred, the superior of the order, Father Christian, wrote an open letter to his potential captors. Fasten your seatbelts, because these are not just words of a good man. These are the words of a true follower of Jesus Christ. Listen to what he wrote. If a day comes that I am a victim of the terrorism that seems to be engulfing all foreigners living in Algeria, I would like my community and my church and my family to remember I've dedicated my life to God and to Algeria. My life is not worth more than any other, not less, not more, nor am I an innocent child. I've lived long enough to know that I too am an accomplice of the evil that seems to prevail in the world around, even that which might lash out blindly at me. And then he says this: if the moment comes, I would hope to have the presence of mind and the time to ask for God's pardon, and for that of my fellow men, and at the same time to pardon in all sincerity he who would attack me. He said, I give thanks to God for my life, completely mine, yet completely theirs too, to God, who wanted it for joy against and in spite of all odds. In this thank you, which says everything about my life, I include you, my friends, past and present, and to you too, my friend at the last moment, who will not know what you are doing. This is where he's speaking to those who might kill him. Yes, for you too, I wish this thank you, this adieu, whose image is in you also, that we may meet again in heaven, like happy thieves, if it pleases God, our common Father. Are you kidding me? Blessed are the peacemakers. They will be called children of God. You see, these 7 monks of Algeria were more than peacemakers. They literally imitated the peace and love of Jesus Christ by offering their lives even for those who hated him and were going to kill them. Isn't this a beautiful example of what it means to be a child of God? Imitate Jesus in everything, including even willing to offer our life for others. And if we do so, we will become peacemakers. And blessed will we be.
Run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father.